Hey guys, Lesson More back with another video, and today we're going to be discussing a hand I played at 500 NL on Ignition. I'll go ahead and pull the hand history up. Okay, so in this hand, I have Ace Jack of Diamonds in the small blinds, folds around to me. I open to 3 big blinds. The big blind 3 bets to 9 big blinds, and I call. The flop is 7-4-3 two-tone, and I decide to lead for a third of the pot. The big blind raises to 18 big blinds, about 3x my bet, and I click it back to a min raise, and the big blind folds. So we're going to discuss a little bit about what's going on and some of the unorthodox play in this hand. So at first glance, some of you may be thinking, like, what the hell is this guy doing? Why is he donking in a 3-bet pot? That doesn't make any sense. So we're just going to talk a little bit about this. So first thing is this is blind versus blind. And when you're in the big blind and you're considering making a 3-bet, you can take 2 strategies, and the GTO strategy is to use a polar strategy out of the big blind. So when you're 3-betting out of the big blinds, you're giving up some EV because you're reopening the action. Where, like, if you're facing an open and you're in the big blinds, you're typically going to be closing the action if there wasn't a 3-bet in front of you. So you need a bit more incentive than normal to 3-bet than the other positions. Like in the small blind should be playing most of its continues as a 3-bet just because it's not closing the action, doesn't get as good of odds to come into the pot. Yeah, and it's going to be, when the small blind calls, the big blind's going to be overcalling a decent bit, and so the small blind will be out of position to 2 players in that scenario. So the big blind is out of position, but also it's closing the action and typically has a good price on an open. So it needs more incentive to reopen the action. So you typically want to go a little more polar. Here's what a polar 3-betting range would look like, blind versus blind. This is sort of a GTO. Well, this is a GTO 3-betting range out of the big blind, so it's going to be like 9s plus. Some of these offsuit ace X, ace 5, ace 4, and then like all the strongest suited broadways and overpairs, and some of this middling junk like 9-4, 10-5, 9-3, and then like some of these suited connectors, and like 10-7 off, Jack 8 off. So you'll see tons of that sort of stuff mixed in into a polar strategy. Same thing would go if the big blind is facing an open from any other position. It wouldn't be as wide as this. Obviously, the big blind would be continuing tighter versus an open in position, just because the big blind is going to be out of position to the opener. So yeah, that's sort of what a polar 3-bet range looks like. And so on a board like 7-4-3, on 7-4-3, both players are going to have a decent amount of 7x, 4x, and 3x, because remember, the imposition player is going to be 3-betting a lot of this middling junk at equilibrium, and they'll have loads of these offsuit like 10-7 off, and then these suited connectors. They'll even have straights like 5-4, 6-5, 7-6. Well, I mean, 5-4 is a straight, but they'll have, like, their range is going to connect a lot better with this board than like a more linear three betting range would look like. So let's talk. So like if you're facing a cutoff open and you're on the button, you're going to be using a bit more of a linear three betting strategy, and it would look something like this. You can definitely make some adjustments, but this is more of a linear range, right? Like you're not going to have any 9-5. It's basically going to be you're just three betting the top X percentage of your range. So yeah, it's like all the suited ace X, all the suited broadways, ace 10 off plus, and like the overpairs, some pocket sevens, queen 9, jack 9 is sort of the bottom of the range. But yeah, mostly high card hands and then some overpairs. So how do these ranges differ? Well, we can sort of compare them. So obviously the middling junk is not going to be present in the linear range. We can actually take a look. So if you push the subtract button on this polar range and then copy in this other range, let's see, copy, paste. Now we have a view of what the polar range contains that the linear range does not. So we can see it's going to be like all this offsuit ace-x, this middling junk, and these suited connectors, right? The suited connectors in particular connect with this board really well. And this linear range does not have any of that. Yeah, but something to take note of is like the 10-7 off, 9-7 off, 9-4, 9-3, 10-4, 10-3, those sort of hands. Yeah, and then like the ace-3 off, that sort of stuff. It's going to connect with this board pretty well. And yeah, again, the linear range is just going to be a lot of whiffed over cards. So when we look at the equilibrium play on the flop, you're actually going to see. Let's take a look at the small blind versus a polar three betting range first. So this is going to be the out of position strategy. It'll be a bit of donking, just because the out of position player is going to have a pretty good density of these lower cards and these low pocket pairs that the in position player won't. But again, like the polar range is going to connect decently well on this board. So a small bit of donking, and then the in position player is just going to be going for a small bet. Just because the out of position player has so many strong hands on this board, the in position player isn't going to want to pile in loads of money with an overpair, just because like once you take like a bet line and use like two big bets, for example, you're just getting called by hands that beat you, because the out of position player will have loads of those on this board. Yeah, so sort of the idea. And now let's take a look at the small blind versus a linear three betting range out of the big blind. So if we have the same out of position range and just give the in position player a linear range, a linear three betting strategy, this is more or less what the out of position player is going to do. So the out of position player is going to have all these low cards that the in position player does not when using a linear three betting strategy. So it's going to have a much stronger range on this board. We can see there's a huge nut advantage towards the top of the range, known as a nut advantage, and then like throughout the range, the out of position player is doing really well. Whereas like if we look at the, let's pull up the, yeah, this one. The out of position player, let's see. I just want to make sure I have this right. Okay, yeah. So on the left, we have the polar three better. The nutted advantage isn't nearly as significant. The in position player is still going to have these sets and straights. Yeah, and the like on this when the imposition player is using a linear range, yeah, the imposition player is only going to have like a bit of pocket sevens, and a7 is like the top of the range for the imposition player. Um, Whereas the out of position player is going to have all the sets, like all the straights, that sort of thing. So it's going to be a pretty sizable advantage. So you're going to start to see a lot more donking versus a linear three betting range that doesn't connect with this board at all. So that's sort of the idea, but I wanted to introduce this because a lot of people don't really give it, like after calling a three bet pre, they sort of just auto check out of position. Um, but I want you to start thinking about this, and an exploitative adjustment you should be able to make is if you know your opponent isn't playing a GTO strategy pre and not using a polar range when three betting from the big blind, your donking frequency should go up on this sort of board because they're not going to have the bottom portion of the polar range that connects with this board. So then the out of position donking frequency can go up, and especially with hands like like a7 or 7-6 that like yeah, like 7-6 and um, wait, oh yeah, yeah, 6-5, 6-5 the straight. All these sorts of hands can donk and deny a lot of equity. Um, and then yeah, just make sure to mix in some overcards with flush draws or backdoors is sort of the idea. So yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to cover. But if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'd probably be able to address them. If you guys have any suggestions for videos, leave that in the comments as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps my channel a lot when you guys like the videos. So thanks again. Have a good one, guys.